So you might be wondering what it's like to go to school for surgical technology. Well, stay tuned. I'll give you all the gory details. The best way to become a surgical technologist is to attend an accredited surgical technology program, because this will give you the most options and opportunities when you graduate. An accredited program is one where a national organization regularly checks to make sure that you are getting the best education possible, and it certifies that the program is doing a good job. You can find a program near you by visiting the CAHEP or ABHES websites and searching for surgical technology programs. So what's it like completing one of these surgical technology programs at an accredited school?
As of January 2022, all surgical technology programs are mandated to be associate degree programs.
This means the program will run on average between 15 and 24 months. In your foundational classes, you'll learn anatomy, the names and locations of parts of the body, physiology, how these parts actually work, medical terminology, the fancy names for all of these parts, and microbiology, about the germs that can infect these parts. Your surgical technology classes will be divided 3 ways. You will have lectures, labs, and clinicals. The first half of your surgical tech lectures covers important background information, such as information about patients, laws, about the OR rooms, equipment, and hospitals, and basic surgical concepts like wound closure and healing, and how a typical case proceeds. The second half of your lectures get into details of common surgical procedures. Lectures will require that you both understand and apply concepts. For example, how do the properties of laser light help achieve surgical goals? And memorize information. What is dantrolene used for? So here's a study hint. When you get to that part of your lectures where you're learning about the procedures themselves, well, I've created a bunch of videos on this channel that both review anatomy and physiology and preview the procedures themselves.
I guess I didn't realize how involved it was. You have to learn laws, you have to learn about microbes, what kind of suture can be used on bowel, what can only be used on the liver, the instrumentation, and so it's a lot more pieces to the puzzle that you don't realize are there.
Then in many of these programs there are 2 different types of labs, one of which is the instrumentation lab. And I hope your memorization skills are good, because you're going to have to learn to identify a lot of different surgical instruments. And what do I mean by a lot? Well, this is just chapter 1. The second type of lab is a skills lab. It's a practice operating room. This is where you'll learn how to maintain a sterile field. You'll learn key skills like flipping, opening, gowning and gloving, and how to move.
And just grab those.
This lab is all about movement. The work of a surgical technologist is a dance, and this is where you'll learn the choreography.
The lab was a lot of fun to me personally, learning all the new techniques. I had never flipped gloves before, or anything else for that matter.
It wasn't just like book work, it was a hands-on experience for lab to be able to practice like how to open your gown and gloves, how to set up a table. That's not something that you can just read from a book and know how to do.
The hands-on stuff is how you get it, because talking about it, no sir. You have to actually do it, and do it, like literally do it 100 times before it just is with you. It's like muscle memory.
Then, once your instructor feels like your skills are good enough that you won't contaminate anything, you'll get to go to a real hospital and not just see, but actually participate in real surgeries.
Did you guys know this is my first surgery with Dr. Bell?
Now for me, my first day of clinicals, that first day that I got to help with a real surgery, that was one of the most memorable days of my life. For most new techs, this is such a rush, such a high, that you can't stop thinking about it, and you want to do whatever you can to get back in there. And you will, because you're required to be actively involved in over 100 real surgeries before you graduate.
And this is a minimum. In fact, most surgical programs across the country, the students get way more than this particular requirement.
Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and because surgical technology uses so many different types of learning and skills, strength in one area can help balance weakness in another. Now, in my case, I was really good at applying concepts. I was okay at moving around the lab, and I was lousy at memorizing things. But other students in my class were great at memorizing things, while others were naturals at moving around the lab. As long as you have some skill in each, your strengths should be able to balance out your weaknesses. All three areas are important, so here's a word of warning. If you find that you really struggle in more than one of these three areas, or if you're simply unable to do any one of these three, then you'll probably find it very difficult to complete this program. For example, I would estimate, and this is a very rough estimate that's different for different schools, that about half the students who start a surgical tech associate's degree program will not complete it. On the first day of class, look around the room. About half of the people sitting there will not complete the program. To find out the numbers for your school, look at your school's website. Compare how many students are accepted into the program versus how many graduate. One reason why many students drop out is because they're simply unable to move properly in the lab. You will be tested on your ability to set up a sterile field without contaminating it. If after a semester or two of practice you're unable to do this, you won't be allowed to continue in the program.
Because we have to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing before we let you go practice on somebody's grandmother.
Another big stumbling block is anatomy and physiology. Often students do rather well in their surgical technology classes, but struggle to pass A&P. They aren't permitted to continue in the program until they pass, often with a C or better. So I recommend taking your anatomy and physiology classes before you actually start the surgical technology program. And for many students, life just gets in the way. Maybe it's financial problems or family issues, pregnancy, or any number of external events can force a student to leave the program.
Let's face it, right? Life is coming at you from all different angles. You've got kids or family members, you have bills. Bills are a big deal, right? We have to pay for them. And so I think life can get in the way.
Most students who do drop out do so during the first 2 semesters of the program. Once you make it to the 3rd semester, your chances of success are high. I can pretty much guarantee that the program will be harder and more time-consuming than you probably think it will be.
Successful students need to be prepared to put all social activities on the back burner for the next year. If a student is working and attending the program, there's not much time for extra activities. Most of the students that I have work and attend the program and have successfully completed the program. So it's just a matter of what's important. And this has to be the most important for the next year.
Depending on what your program is, you could be in class Monday through Friday, or sometimes you're in class part of the week, you're in lab part of the week, and then there's definitely, no matter what program you're in, an at-home component. It takes a lot of studying.
But most students are able to step up and meet the challenge. If you have kids, this can be even harder. Not impossible because many have done it, but it will be challenging.
Studying and getting the work done is like you're done with school, so you got to go pick the kids up, and then you got to bring them home, and you have to cook dinner and wash them and make sure everything's ready for the next day. And then by the time they go to bed, you think, oh, I want to go to bed, but you have to do your work and studying.
One instructor I know tells her students with children to make sure that they have a plan for who will watch their kids while they're in school, and then have a backup to that plan, and then have a backup to that backup, because you'll probably need all of that. But even if you end up not completing the program for whatever reason, it will not have been a total waste. You will still have learned quite a lot about hospitals, about the OR, about the importance of sterility, and about quite a few surgical instruments. And with this knowledge, there are 2 jobs in particular that you might be a good candidate for. One is a vet tech. Yes, animals need surgery as well, and vets need people who love animals to help them during these surgeries. Another job you would be a good candidate for is in the sterile processing department of your local hospital. In Central Sterile, surgical instruments are cleaned, repaired, organized, wrapped, sterilized, and stored so that they can be used again. Many surgical techs worked in Central Sterile at some point, and many still do. They find the job fits their lifestyle and personalities better.
He's waking up. I need to up the SIBO.
An artery on an appendectomy?
You're losing blood fast.
People who easily adapt, are ready for something new, can go with the flow, and can act calmly when things go awry, often do well as surgical technologists. And people who like predictability, order, repetition, and in general knowing exactly what to expect, they tend to really excel in sterile processing. In fact, a really good job to have while you complete your surgical technology program would be in the sterile processing department at your local hospital. There you will get a good head start on knowing the hospital and the people who work there, and an especially good head start on learning the names of all the instruments. That's something that would have helped me while I was in school. So what kind of people make good surgical technologists?
We want students or need students who are self-motivated, self-driven, also able to retain information, have thick skin, have a strong sense of integrity. Integrity is huge with us. We can spend extra time needed to teach the hands-on skills, but we can't teach integrity or positive attitude.
The most important thing as a student is for you to be dedicated and to be determined. I have had students that just graduated high school that have never had a job outside of maybe, a fast food restaurant. I've had students who were in their 50s and 60s, and this was their second or third career. I've had students who already have bachelor's degrees, and I've had students that have never taken college in their life. Single moms, single dads.
I've had students who have had no medical experience to students who have had 20 years of medical experience. It really doesn't matter as far as the medical experience goes. What matters is that integrity and that positive attitude and work ethic. You're going to get out of this program what you put in it.
Once you decide you want to become a surgical technologist and you apply to a school, it's usually several months before you can actually start your classes. But you want to get started now. What should you do? Well, here are my recommendations. The best way to get ahead is to take your anatomy and physiology and medical terminology classes ahead of time. Most colleges will let you start on them now while you wait to start your surgical technology program itself. And if your program doesn't require medical terminology, take it anyway. Spend this time focusing on anatomy and physiology and medical terminology. Surprisingly, it's your A&P and med term that will help you answer nearly half the questions on the big national board exam. These classes are really that important. Don't worry about the actual surgical technology stuff yet, because every teacher does things a little bit differently. And ironic that I'm saying this, don't watch any skills videos such as flipping gloves, draping the Mayo stand, etc. I've seen students struggle because they learned it one way from some random video, but their teacher wants them to do it a different way. But if you're really dying to learn something surgical technology related, you can start by learning to identify your basic instruments. Don't worry about any of the specialty instruments at this point. So now the big question. Does it cost a lot to go to school for surgical technology? Well, that really depends on how you define a lot, where you live, and how much help you might be able to get. First, let's look at the base price. And just like when buying a car, the price you actually end up paying may be very different from the base price.
I saved a lot of money, so I pay for the whole program out of my own pocket.
If you're paying completely out of pocket, getting an associate's degree in surgical technology generally costs somewhere between $8,000 on the low end and $20,000 on the high end. These are the total costs of the program, not the per year costs. And these base costs will vary quite a bit from state to state and even from school to school. Is that a lot of money? Yes, but compared to the cost of the average bachelor's degree at a four-year college, which can cost several times this amount, technical school is really a pretty good deal.
The program itself, it wasn't very expensive. The only thing that really came out of pocket was my books, especially if like you have like a scholarship or anything like that, it covers it. Financial aid covered half of it as well, but out of pocket was mainly book expenses.
And many students will qualify for grants, especially the Pell Grant, which can cut the price almost in half. I strongly recommend that you fill out the FAFSA financial aid form every year, even if you think you might not qualify.
There are so many grants and there are so many different avenues for financial aid and scholarships. Most colleges have private foundations that handle grants and scholarships for students. There are financial aid packages out there that can really help a student not just pay for college, but also pay for, living while going to college. And I think people don't tap into those resources as often. And it's probably just because they don't realize that they're out there.
Plus, just about everyone can deduct at least some of their tuition costs from their federal taxes. Some students, if they do this correctly, and yes, paying for rent and food, no matter where that might be, counts as room and board. These students actually end up with a pretty sizable refund. So although the cost of attending school for surgical technology is relatively low, you're still going to have to commit quite a bit of time and effort. So it's probably a good idea to make sure that this is a job you'll actually want once you graduate. So in the next video, I'll talk about what the job itself is like and what will be expected of you.